Good morning and happy non-farm payroll morning. We just had our non-farm payroll candle post, which is great to see. We also did have our NVIDIA earnings last night. So we've had quite a bit of news overnight, which is pretty cool. It has led to a pretty nice push up on ES, which I really do like to see. Let's go look at how our non-farm payroll numbers posted up actually, because if you guys recall, right, this number is actually about a month old. I think it's about like 48 days old because this was the number that should have come out in early October, right when the government shut down. And so this was the first number that they kind of posted. So here's our data. We also did have unemployment. So our non-farm payroll, the numbers did come back stronger, which is good to see. However, our unemployment rate was a little bit higher than what their estimates were. So, um, again, right, for NFP, if the numbers come back stronger than what the anticipation was, that just means they've created more jobs during the period that they were measuring. And of course, larger jobs or more jobs created tend to equate to more buying power, which means good things for the economy. So, non-farm payroll came out good. Um, I don't think we're going to have too much other data today. At 10 a.m., we do have some existing home sales that we could potentially look out for, but because of that non-farm payroll number that posted, we've pushed up pretty high today on our candles on our chart. Um, so let's see. Here's where post market was with Nvidia kind of posting earnings. I think they did beat. I want to actually look at where Nvidia is. Let me look at my phone to see how how strong Nvidia is today. Because I know QQQ was up about 2% last night at one point. SPY, of course, not quite as much because Nvidia is just a larger percentage of QQQ's portfolio. So let's see. Nvidia for pre-market is doing okay. It's up about 4.8% on the day. So NVIDIA is looking strong. I'm pretty sure every other AI stock that works with NVIDIA is also quite strong. So we could potentially expect to see some strength in the day, which is pretty exciting. So one thing I want to do is pop open our fractals. So we're trading at 67.57 on this fine morning. One thing I do want to show you guys too is we did take one trade last night during ETH in this little gray box zone. We mapped out an area on the 7 wave 60 and the 10 wave 15. Let me show you guys this real quick. To go short at 67.48. We ended up hitting two take profits, so we were able to grab 8 points out of that before we had a little bit of a retracement. We swerved our third take profit at 38. Um, Oh, sorry. Wait, never mind. We did hit TP3, but our TP4 was at 30, and so we ended up swerving that. So we got about 10 points out of this trade, and had a nice little scalp. So that was fun because we don't really do ETH trades too much. Hey, morning, Dark Horse. All right, let's go hop into fractals. We are currently trading at 67.60. Let's see where we're at. Wave one daily. Okay. Awesome. So our analysis yesterday on Top Step TV was pretty freaking close to perfect. Pretty perfect actually for a high of day reject, which was nice to see. Um, we were in that pretty nice range, and we're anticipating a little bit of a push outside of that range before we would get a rejection and kind of play in that zone. So that was really good to see. We're now retraced back up over pivot on our wave one daily and are making an H2 after a little bit of a bullish day yesterday during our trading session. And I just want to see here, our vectors currently showing at 67.59. 67.66 is the open state that we've created this morning. And then 67.90 is an open state that's about a week old. So this was from the last long wave that we created, just above our 20% odds. So we could potentially look for 67.90 for some sort of potential rejection, um, for some sort of like potential reject area if that looks good on our other time frames. I do want to be a little bit cautious of potentially getting like above our ceiling and above any sort of IV walls, because right now I do believe we are trading at our IV walls. They're positioned at around 67.60 to 67.75. Um, so we are technically within our IV walls right now. So 67 was kind of like, I would say, right in the middle of our IV walls. So anything outside of those IV walls, remember guys, like that's what I consider an outlier day for me. And I'm going to be pretty like hands off if we do get above our IV walls and end up actually closing above them too. So 6790 is a little bit above our IV walls, but I'm not a fan of it because if we can get up there, tap that zone and then come back down, there could be potential there. Okay, so we see 6790. Let's see if there's other zones on our charts. So our 7 wave 60, we are looking at, hey, morning independent. So 7 wave 60 doesn't actually show that much, which is pretty, and oh no, it does, never mind. Sorry, I'm reading this wrong. So our 7 wave 60, we're actually not that overextended. I was trying to look at these candles. I need to zoom in here. Okay, so we did briefly make a short wave last night, which is cool to see. We did break above our pivot and above vector and are currently trading down here around our 50% odds. 67.62 is our 50% odds. Look at this. We have to go all the way up to 68.02 to get to a 20% odds, and even further, 68.27 to get to an open state. So we don't have any confluences with what we were seeing on the Wave 1 daily. And this is also showing that the 7 wave 60, as it's currently positioned, has quite a bit of room to the upside based on that wave shorting. So we'll see. Whoa, dark. Oh, I was gonna say, I was like, dark horse. I'm like, bearish today. I'm thinking bullish, right? Yeah. I think if anything, we might want to be looking for a vector bounce or potentially looking for like some like really, really high like A plus rejection. Like I don't want to be like taking a rejection down at like 50% odds or anything like that. The one thing I do want to look at too on our 7 wave 60 is the past couple hours, look at how disrespected Vector was. I think we were looking at this a little bit on Monday. Um, but it's kind of hard to see because the 80% odds are right over it. But look at how horrible this vector price action is. This was at like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7 a.m. We broke below vector, broke back below vector, above vector, eventually had a push above and did see vector as supportive just recently. But so far, the 7 wave 60 has looked pretty bad. So I don't know. We'll have to see what some of our lower time frames do look like. But right now, with how flat Vector has been on the 7 wave 60 and how disrespected it was pretty much all morning, I might be hesitant to take any sort of Vector play. Right now, it's currently trading at 67.41, 67.42. So we could potentially see supportive opportunity down there. Let's go look at our 20 wave 15. Okay. So similar story on the 20 wave 15 Vector, right? It's trading at 67.42. And we're a little bit more extended on this one, but it doesn't look too different, honestly, from our 7 wave 60. So similar to the wave 1 daily, we do have an open state up here at 67.90 and 67.95. We have our 20% and 10% odds. But again, we don't really have open states up here until like another 70 points up to 68.45. So um, I'm not going to be m- probably mapping this one yet in case we have like a really bullish New York session and we get close to this quickly. But like one of the things I do want to caution you guys on is if we have a zone that's this far away from where we're currently trading, basically 100 points away, if we have like a retracement down and like we go below pivot, for example, and then back above pivot, we're going to see these open states revise. And so I do want to caution people for like marking a level and then maybe trying to trade off of that level like 6 hours later. Because depending on what the market has done, and if our waves have like revised below pivot and back below pivot, we can see those changes on our open state. So like I'm not going to be marking something all the way up at 68.45 until we get a little bit closer to that level to see if it's still like valid, basically. So we do have this 67.90 and 95 area as 20 and 10% odds on our 20% our 20 wave, which is technically in confluence with the wave 1 daily for a potential rejection area. Again, that's just outside of our IV walls, would give us some potential for rejection to get back below our IV walls, especially as market opens. Um, 6742 is the location of this vector. Honestly, pretty similar to the 7 wave 60. Look at how much disrespect we had of Victor. Basically from 1 a.m. all the way to now. It's like 1 a.m. we kind of had a really flat vector and we're using it as anchor. So we were kind of going above it, below it, above it, below it. We had that revision of our wave. So right, we went below pivot. Our vector was pretty disrespected again, right? Kind of used as anchor. Vector was really flat, broke above, broke below, finally had this pushback above with that non-farm payroll candle. So 67.42 we could look at for potential bounces, but with how disrespected it was prior to non-farm payroll, I really want to see this vector cluster start to form some type of trend before we have any sort of high probability bounces off of this area. 10-way 15, similar story with the 10% odds at 67.91. 10-way 15 is where we start seeing a little bit of risk though, because above this 67.91 we have a lot of blank space, all the way up to 68.39 and 68.44. So we could attempt like right a 90 to a 91 rejection to see how it plays. The good news is we would have a very measured stop based on the zone that we would work. So far this 90 zone is looking okay for a rejection. I wish we would have more open states here, but it's nice to have those 10% odds in the very least. Again, vectors trading at 67.42, similar to all of our other time frames. We've been seeing that this vector was also very disrespected prior to the non-farm payroll candle. So still don't like vector. But I do kind of like the 67.90 area for rejection. 7-way 5-minute. With our 5% odds. Oh, excuse me, I got a yawn. With our 5% odds at 67.94. So again, in confluence with what we have on the wave one daily and kind of every other time frame. Um, a pretty decent amount of blank space up to 68.30 if we do get past this zone. So if there was going to be a reversion that we played today, it was probably going to be in this 90 zone, and we can map it out on a linear chart. So vector 67.47, this vector cluster is actually pretty tight, which makes sense, right? Because if we do look back at our linear chart, we just consolidated, right? Consolidated for hours before we kind of got that non-farm payroll candle. So that gave all of our different time frames plenty of time to basically reconcile into that really, really narrow vector cluster, which kind of like supports that thesis of it being very flat and having it be relatively disrespected. Now on the 7-way 5-minute, it doesn't look too disrespected just because this vector is so dynamic. But like one of the things that I don't like is just how quickly we've been going from long wave to short wave to long wave to short wave in this period of time. Whereas like, yesterday we saw a lot better volatility on our long waves and short waves, especially like right after NVIDIA earnings. So I would like to see our 7-way 5-minute get a little bit more volatility into the mix before we start looking to take any trades, especially in this like crappy area of consolidation where we're kind of just trading between the two 20% odd zones. So again, 67.94 is 5% on the 7-way 5-minute, is pretty, pretty like in line with all the other time frames that we're looking at. And then finally, the 50-way 1-minute. Vector's been pretty squirrely on this too. 67.50. So right now that vector cluster is 67.42 to 67.50. 50-way 1-minute, we do not see any sort of confluences with that 67.90, but this is, I think, the only time frame that didn't have those confluences. I think, look at that. We have this one cluster up here at 67.97, just a tiny resistive cluster. Um, but then we don't really have any open states up until this 2% odds at 68.09. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to mark 67.90 to like 97 as a potential resistive zone. The only reason I don't like it as an A plus setup and just want to see it as like a pretty good zone is because we don't really have any open states in that area. We just have the percentage, like the percent odds, and then we have the only open state on the wave one daily at 67.90.34. So based on that, we'll do 67.90.25 all the way up to, let's see, we had, right, the 7-wave 60 did not have it. That was the only one that didn't have it. So 67.90.25 to, let's say, 96 will be this zone. We'll do 91 is in the zone, 94, and then this 90, 95 again. Okay, so we'll do 90.25 up to 96 will be the gray zone that I marked today. The only reason I don't love it is because we only have that one open state on the wave one daily, but I do like the wave one daily open states. Um, and then we don't really have too many open states beyond like our other time frames. And to Dark Horse's point, um, let's see, so 90 to 96 is what I'm gonna do. To Dark Horse's point, we're really bullish today, right, guys? I think our depth of market's been probably pretty strong all evening, and our non-farm payroll numbers came back good. NVIDIA earnings came back good. We're already in this zone of trading basically amongst our IV walls, which is where our market makers want to keep us within. Breaking out of our IV walls is up at 67.73. So I'm just going to mark this real quick that if we get above this, right, basically where we're at high day, we start getting into outlier territory, in my opinion. The other piece of data I'm going to look at, though, as New York session opens, just to kind of make sure that this zone has some possibility, is where our overnight, where our ceiling, where our SPY ceiling is for the day. So it's currently trading at 68.05 to 68.15. I do want to see a revision there. If we have like a significant revision on the ceiling to the upside, I will be looking probably a little bit higher for a different reversion potential. But the one thing that I do want to say, right, is just because we get to the ceiling on like SPY or QQQ or something like that, doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to reject it. We could also just get pinned to the ceiling, right? And we do tend to see that sometimes, especially on outlier days where we'll crawl up, crawl up, crawl up, hit the ceiling, and just kind of stay there. And so, like, we could try to take a rejection play at the ceiling, but sometimes, like, it actually doesn't give you that many points because buyers are still so strong, but it kind of just gets into a deadlock and you don't actually really make too many points off of reversion. So, I am really going to be checking MoveSpot, making sure that our ceiling data looks good, and we kind of have a little bit of a stable ceiling, especially as we approach our New York session open. So, kind of what I have there. I'm gonna mark our vector cluster on ES, even though I don't like it. We will build our box for the day on vector cluster. I believe it was anywhere from like 50 to like 40, 45. Yeah, it's like 45 to 50. So um, again, it's a pretty tight vector because we've been so consolidated all evening. I don't like vector though right now because it was so like ambivalent as we were in like our 7 wave 60 and like our 20 wave 15. And then our even like our 7 wave 5, like our really low time frames, were just like going making long waves and short waves. So I'm definitely not going to be taking a vector cluster bounce this morning, but this is where it's currently placed. I'll probably be moving this around as the day continues. Um, Independent, let's go look at MNQ real quick. I don't really watch MNQ too much, but let's go see if there's any zones on there. So I think it's going to be a pretty similar story. It's probably even going to be a little bit stronger than ES because, like I said, I think QQQ is posting about 2% up today. QQQ is just a larger portion of the Nasdaq, so that's going to obviously be stronger. So we're trading at 25 to 35 right now. Let's go look at our Nasdaq numbers. So let's see, wave one daily. We are up at our 20% odds. 20% odds are at 273. We have a 10% odds all the way up at 25,910. So quite a ways to go there. Look at that. We actually did close an open state that we created about 9 days ago on NQ. We blew right through that open state, which I'm happy independent you're asking us to look at NQ, right? Because this open state that was created on NQ last week is probably in somewhat of a confluence with what that ES open state is that we're tracking in the 90s. And NQ pretty much just like straight up disrespected that open state and carried on. So, two Dark Horse's concerns today. We are probably going to be bullish, right? Strong NFP, strong NVIDIA earnings. Let's try not to jump in front of a moving train here. But this 25 275 is the 20%. We don't have any open states up until 25,912, so there's not too much clarity on the NQ, especially on the wave one daily for any high probability rejections. Let's go look at the other lower time frames though. So our 7 wave 60, we're trading our vector at 25,150. And we have an open state all the way up at 25,565. 20% odds are 25,444. So a pretty huge amount of room up. Isn't that, wouldn't I say? Let's look. So we're at 25,230. So we would have another like 250 points before we'd get anywhere in terms of like low probability of continuation on the five to get up to like 565, for example. Let's go see if our lower time frames have any clarity. 20 waves currently trading at the 50% odds. Gosh, look, just no open states on NQ up until 636. 25 through 11, 20% odds, which I wouldn't feel super confident by trading on the 20 wave. Crazy. See if the 10 wave has anything. 25, 325 is this other cluster and this 10% odds, but again, not up until 660. This is actually a pretty cool area because we have this open state that we made back on the 14th, and then another open state we made on the 19th that are stacked right on top of each other. That could be a pretty interesting area. It's like, it looks like it's like 557 and 564 are these two areas, but that again feels pretty freaking far away. Um, 25603 has our next open state up here, really far away. Not a lot of resistive clusters. Basically, from where we're trading, past 5% odds, basically nothing up until those 2% odds. We can maybe look to a vector bounce on NQ, but I think NQ is probably a little bit of the same story in terms of vector being not necessarily disrespected on our time frame, small time frames, but just seeing a lot of revisions of long waves and short waves, especially on the 7-minute, 5-minute. This type of visual where we're not really getting past our 20% ranges is what really makes me want to stay hands off with like a vector play for NQ. So let's go look at our 50 wave 1 minute real quick. Kind of same story. 50 wave 1 minute starting to get a little bit extended here. Um, 508 is our next open state, and this is an open state that we created on so 11/19, which was yesterday, basically at the time that NVIDIA posted earnings. So I think our data is just a little bit skewed on NQ because we had such a big shoot up on our candles right at market open. The fact that we didn't like have another dramatic room move to the downside or anything, I think is skewing some of this like percentage odds data a little bit, especially on our lower time frames. So um, I like where Dark Horse's heads at to be a little bit weary of potential reversions. If we want to be taking them, let's definitely try them, but be very, very mindful of our risk management and just be aware too that if we do get above our IV walls and get close to our ceiling, be very, very aware of bounces today as well, right? If uh if we want to like say bounce vector and vectors above IV wall, that would be a very like low risk to reward play for me because we're already in outlier territory. Our fractals would be showing that we're kind of overextended already on small time frames. So the risk to reward for a large move for continuation to the upside feels low. So there's risk, I definitely think, for bouncing long past our IV walls, unless, of course, our ceiling revises very, very high, right? And then I do like this kind of 90.25 area to 96. I would try it, especially because we had a winning play last night, but I'm not going to be like trying to reject every reversion area that we see, right? I think this could be very much so a one and done play, or a one and done day, making sure that we've had like really good risk management and good analysis. So we'll be cautious today because we're on our way above our IV walls. We're already approaching outlier territory before our New York session has even started. So that's all I got for you guys today. Be cautious with vector. Make sure that you watch a trend form before you start thinking about taking a vector cluster play, and just be very aware of where we are in terms of outliers and positioning, guys. All right, guys, have a great day. For those of you in Ascend Premium, I will see you in live voice here in a couple minutes. See you guys.